Hi, I'm Sally Kirkman from sallykirkman.com, and I'm here with Christina Rodenbeck from oxfordastrologer.com, and we're here to do one of our little vignettes, Astrology Talk Investigate. So short, sweet, sharp. And as we're coming into eclipse season, we thought you'd like to know a bit more about eclipses. So this month's question is, are eclipses good news or bad news? Well, Christina, what's the quick answer?
Yes and no.
Yes, both.
Both. The answer is depends on your chart, where they fall in your chart, what kind of eclipse it is, and you know, if you need change or if you want stasis. If you don't want anything to change, then eclipses are bad. But if you need change, they can galvanize change in a way that is either positive or negative. So, they open a doorway. That's what I always think of eclipses as, like, kick the door open very quickly. They're like exaggerated new and full moons, but much more than that, right? So an eclipse, they are a really important pattern. I think they're personally, I think they're one of the most important astrological patterns to keep an eye on. They flavor an entire 18-month period where the eclipses are falling. So they can be good. The short answer is they are both good and bad.
Yeah. No, I agree definitely. And it is, when I'm working with clients, eclipses are so powerful. They're incredibly powerful. You kind of understand, I think, and there is this, I think people are really intrigued by them because, even the term eclipse is a bit scary, isn't it? It's like, who or what is being eclipsed? And they are seen very much, also, if you witness eclipse, oh my Lord, to witness eclipse, which is quite rare in your lifetime. I've witnessed one, 1999, Southwest England. And to have, almost the sky go dark in the daytime and the birds stop singing and flowers close, you can understand it's awesome. It's awesome. I mean, it's like nature. It's kind of taking charge and changing the natural flow of things. Yeah. So, you can understand why people go, what is happening? What is happening? It's like, the earth and nature, the universe it's almost like they're shutting down during an eclipse, but they're not. They close, but then there's what emerges afterwards. So there's often this theme in eclipses of what's hidden and what's then come to light. So if you've witnessed one, they are awesome, I think, really awesome eclipses.
It's an occultation, isn't it?
Yes.
Which means things being hidden, being revealed.
Yeah.
And, it's one of the reasons we have astrology at all is eclipses, because our ancient forebears were obsessed with eclipses. They wanted to track them, and they realized that they were something that you could actually track. And, they were seen as harbingers of change in power quite often. Political power. So it would be the death of kings would be predicted by eclipses.
Yeah.
So they're also one of the things that's been tracked for longer than almost anything else is the eclipses, or kept note of by people because they're so powerful. And I certainly believe that I know that they're really powerful because of how they affect the people I see.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, just recently, it's noteworthy that the United States has had two massive eclipses, one in 2017 and one in 2024 that went all the way across the United States. Now, in case you're thinking, well, how often does that actually happen? It's really quite rare.
Yeah. Yes, it is, isn't it? And I mean, there's 2017, 2024. This is about Trump, isn't it?
Oh, completely. And the previous one to that, just to give you a flavor of how rare they are, was in 1918. Okay. Yeah. To the one in. So that was one in the previous century. And even there weren't even very many that were visible from anywhere in the mainland. So it's very rare, and has been a harbinger of change in power. and it's interesting that it's happened twice across the United States, from corner to corner one way and corner to corner the other way.
Mm,
Now there won't be another one uh, like that, as big as that, I don't think, until 2044.
yeah. So it's very rare, and it's interesting. It's in this seven-year period as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we've done people born on eclipses. Of course, Trump is born on an eclipse as well. So there's this sort of double whammy effect going on, and bringing significant change. I mean,
Well,
what to say.
also, um, Trump being born on an eclipse is a very good example of of a person who has done really well with eclipses,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
He's done really well with eclipses. Eclipses do, and he's very tightly born on the eclipse.
yeah.
It's not kind of close to an eclipse, it's on the eclipse.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
so here he comes, and, and also there can be an element with eclipses of destruction. So it's not like a smooth change in power always. It can be
mm,
quite a kind of annihilate the enemy
mm.
change in power.
Yeah, and I was going to say the other thing with eclipses that I often see is there's a theme of hubris as well around eclipses. If you think you're all powerful, then the gods come along, GODS, the gods come along and they change things and they bring you back down to earth. Yeah.
I know we've mentioned this before, but it bears mentioning again. The British royal family has got is often born on an eclipse. They're repeatedly born on eclipses, and that has been, I mean, quite a smooth change of power from one generation to the next.
Mm,
But one of the things about eclipse-born people is that they may have a tendency to eclipse others.
yeah.
They
Yeah.
may put others in the shadow, or they may be put in shadow themselves. It depends how it works out for them. But there's
Mm,
an eclipsy element to very eclipse people.
mm, I mean, Princess Diana she was a classic one, wasn't she?
Mm.
Diana, Goddess of the Moon. Her name was Goddess of the Moon. She was born on an eclipse, and all the big events in her life happened on eclipses, and she was eclipsed. I mean, the other thing to say, so the eclipses, I often think, play out more. You see them very clearly in the royals and these powerful individuals. I mean, that's what it's about. And the sun is the king, the moon is the queen of the heavens as well. So you can see that. I mean, an obvious example of that was when we had the Taurus Scorpio eclipses and we had our queen pass away, Queen Elizabeth, a Taurus, and, her son, King Charles, a Scorpio, come to power. I mean, that was just so obvious, this sort of passing on of power, the change of leadership role, really important in this country.
And also quite smooth. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing, that sometimes it can be like, and
Mm,
so that was not bad, that eclipse.
mm,
That was
mm,
actually quite good,
mm,
right? It was a good way of, I mean, and also, she kept, and I think this is true of Diana as well. She tended to put other people into the shade, right? Because she was so shiny,
mm,
So that was the
mm.
occulting power of the eclipse person.
Yeah.
And the same with the queen,
Yeah.
in a completely different way. But nevertheless, Queen was in the room. That was the person that everybody was looking at, right?
Yeah.
The,
Yeah.
the eclipse person.
Mm,
And, and Charles was always in the shadow. And it's
mm,
interesting to see how that's changed. He comes out. Um,
mm,
yeah,
mm.
very obvious example. And again, smooth.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and there's also a big difference between a total eclipse, a really powerful eclipse, and a sort of minor little thing, because eclipses happen 4 times a year. You should know that.
Mm,
They happen in pairs of signs, opposite signs,
mm.
and there's usually two together, right?
Yeah. Mm.
Um,
Yes. Yeah. So we've got these next ones coming up, haven't we, on March 14th, March 29th, which is why, we wanted to talk about eclipses now. Um, just I wanted to say something as well about, the other thing I notice with eclipses is that it's often during, it's not necessarily the single eclipse that triggers things. It's very often this, the eclipse cycle, which, as we said, can be 18 months to 2 years. And it often is a time, I mean, if it's your star sign, I mean, we're in Virgo Pisces at the moment, it often brings you to fame. I've seen that quite often. I mean, there's Phoebe Waller-Bridges, brilliant writer, Fleabag, Killing Eve. I mean, she came to fame under the Cancer Capricorn eclipses. So there's something about, as well, I think, the public profile of a person and the private self. It's being out in the public eye isn't easy. It's not easy at all. You have to take on a new persona. So I think eclipses can be about that. You can come more prominent, more profile, more to fame on the eclipses. But then what do you lose?
Yeah.
There may be a sense that what do you lose? You lose some of your personal, private self, perhaps.
Yeah. What's the sacrifice? So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a south node and the north node of the moon. This is where the eclipses happen. And the south node, which is actually is currently in Virgo, right? It's going through Virgo. And the north node is currently going through Pisces. So they'll always be in these opposite signs. And the south node can sometimes show you what is released or sacrificed.
Yeah.
And the north node is showing you what's absorbed and what's becoming.
Mm.
And interestingly enough, the south node has this sort of reputation of people don't like it, but actually I see quite often people with strong south node, publish a lot of books. So you release a lot into the
Mm-hmm.
world, or
Mm.
you release something into the world. It's not bad. And
Mm.
same with the north node, it can be um, what are you gaining with the north node? It's the
Yeah.
mouth of the dragon. It's the head of the dragon.
Mm.
And the south node is the tail of the dragon. What are you releasing? And
Mm.
both of these things can be positive and both of them can be negative. I mean, you can work out the negative from that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
south node is loss and north node can be greed.
Yeah. It can. And that again, so I think it's this sense of hubris, isn't it? What are you doing things for as well? Are you getting greedy for power or fame? And if you're doing that, then you're losing. I mean, particularly in Vedic astrology, this is very clear with the nodes. You're losing kind of your spiritual connection or your humility. So I think eclipses make that very clear. They make this polarity quite clear in life,
The
as
north node
well.
being the materialist and the south node being the spiritual.
Mm,
So
mm,
it can be quite, these are very contrasting ideas. And what's interesting currently with these eclipses is that you have the north node, that you have that reversed.
mm,
So the north node is in currently the spiritual place, the place
mm,
of popularity, of gossip. Also, there's a sort of negative side to Pisces, and the south node is in the material place, Virgo, Earth
yeah.
sign, very
Yeah.
practical, real stuff. So we'll see how that works out. That these nodes are behaving in ways that are maybe quite opposite to what
Mm,
one would expect. And it's
mm,
part of the tumult of 2025 is these eclipse points going through Pisces Virgo
mm,
as
mm.
as Neptune is exiting
Yeah.
Pisces, and of course this first eclipse, which is a total eclipse of the moon, is makes the south during that eclipse. It's directly opposite to Neptune.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's really adding something else to it, isn't it?
It's
And
spinning it.
I think it's quite an interesting theme as well, because I think the things with eclipses, people sometimes say to me, how do you prepare for an eclipse? I think it's very hard to, because eclipses, they often bring the unexpected and they bring things that are hidden to light. So, my experience when you're going through these eclipses, it's how you respond to what's happening that's coming from the outside in. So, on some sense, you have to surrender to it. You have to surrender to life and respond as best you can to what's going on, because these eclipses very often are powerful times of change on a personal level.
If there's something that you really want to escape from or really want to let go of, like a toxic, like a scary marriage.
Yeah.
An eclipse can be quite a good point to do that, though, because
Mm.
you just completely leave it. You know, you can completely get rid of something
Mm.
on an eclipse sometimes. And there are things in life that we need to completely delete, don't we?
Yeah.
And there's a
Yeah.
sense of deletion with certain eclipses.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
one feels very much more kind of wiping the window clear, you know?
Yeah. So you can see more clearly, maybe.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, s-
Interesting.
so it's a powerful eclipse coming up on the 14th, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
And then there's the last one. There's the one on the 29th of March, isn't there? Which
It's
is that,
completing a cycle, isn't it? It's in Aries. It's completing the Aries Libra cycle. So if that's been important to you over the last couple of years, particularly if you're those signs, Cancer, Capricorn, it's usually the same mode, then that may be the time to like this chapter's coming to an end. So it may be a time to kind of close the door and move on. But yeah, it's Pisces Virgo that is a huge
yeah.
themed season coming up. And
But
obviously, if you want to know more about it, then listen into our monthly podcast as well, because there'll be a lot on that coming up.
And I just want to say on that theme of as you're saying, that it's the completion of
Mm.
something coming on the 29th. And one thing I notice is that there can be, for example, a relationship born on an eclipse might also just end within that eclipse cycle. It may just be an 18-month one, you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
18 months is quite a kind of amount. I notice, especially with young people, that there's the 6 month relationship, which is like, oh my God, you're in the sex haze and then suddenly you're out of it. And you realize that you're actually been sleeping with a monster. Or,
You
oh,
find out who they actually are.
yeah, you sort of notice the kind of the haze comes off and you're like, oh,
Mm.
okay.
Mm.
But there's an 18-month one as well, which
Yeah.
is an eclipse thing. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, wait, I like you, but do I really want to spend the rest of my life with
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. And then the nodal return,
Yeah.
which is also part of this when you get, which is 19 years, 18 and
Yes.
a half, 19 years. That was my relationship. And that is so, again, it's another time to, are we in or are we out? It's a time of either
It's a time of
reassessment or life saying, come on,
it's like,
wake up,
no.
move on.
And I notice
Yeah.
also like nodal like eclipses. So that's an important thing that often happens. It's the relationship thing. And I have to say, I think this series that we've been through in Aries Libra have been a lot about relationships
Yeah,
in
they
general,
have.
to make a
They have.
sweeping statement. And quite often the eclipses are also about where you live. So you find people who kind of completely move house every 19 years or every 9 years.
Yeah. Yeah. They're often big chapters in your life, aren't
Yeah.
they? It's the end of a chapter. So really powerful, really important.
And the reason we're talking about 9 and 19 years is that's when the eclipses happen again in the same pair of signs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there's an incredible series of cycles within cycles with the
Mm.
eclipses.
Mm. Yeah.
So 18 months, 18 years, and it's really worth looking back at your life and thinking, well, was there a cycle that I was doing? And
Yeah.
also for the nodal return itself, so that will be at the age of around 19 will be the
Yeah.
first one.
Yeah. Which is often when people leave home, isn't it? And
Yeah,
head off out into the world.
yeah.
Yeah, they're really important cycles. They kind of mirror, I think they tell the stories of your life, actually, eclipses. They
Mm.
show these important, significant turning points.
And not all eclipses are equal for everybody, obviously. That
No.
doesn't really need to be said. But some have these massive effects across a whole country, like the Great American Eclipses.
Mm.
And some are really will just be affect you personally.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
Yay.
Are eclipses good news or bad news? Hope that answers it for you.
Both. Take
Take
care.
care.